Welcome to the International Institute for Facilitation's podcast, Spaghetti on the Wall. I'm Eileen Douse, Chair Emeritus and Director of Assessments for INIFAC. And today I am joined by, I'm going to try this, Orlando Gemignani. Not sure, my Italian is terrible, but that's
Perfect.
okay. We're going to talk about international things. Um, uh, Orlando is a coach and a mentor. He's also a certified virtual facilitator with INIFAC. He is also a multilingual, I think it's 6 or 8 languages, facilitator, and he is a co author of a book on temperament. And today we are going to talk about facilitating internationally. And who else to do that with but Orlando? So, Orlando, welcome first, welcome.
Thank you.
And my thinking is between all of your international experience and my international experience, we might just go on for days and days because I'm sure we have a lot of stories and insights. So I am so excited you're here. So excited.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you.
Let's start with, let's go really big first. Let's go, what is culture? Because we can talk about the facilitating and the international part, but I do believe all nations have a certain culture. So for you, what is culture?
For me, culture, it's anything that is relevant in terms of not just the environment, but many different ingredients that are shared by a group of individuals in a particular time and a particular place. And there is a lot of flexibility and fluidity in terms of the definition. So I think the important thing about culture is to know that it's unique to those that belong to that culture. And so that's why the challenge of facilitating internationally
Hmm.
is to be able to be curious and be able to be flexible and willing to learn because there's
Yeah,
no, I think there is no one size fits all for culture.
that's
Yeah.
right. And for me, culture is like it's like a silent language because it incorporates the beliefs and the values and the roles and the customs and the laws and all of these things that is very difficult to be an expert or wise or conscious of. And I don't know about you, but I have stumbled a couple of times in the culture, and the only thing that saved me is exactly what you just said, being open and curious to ask.
Yes, yes. I think that, well, you developed a certain sensitivity
That's right.
with
Right.
mistakes that you make or seeing mistakes that other people make,
Yeah.
with your own culture.
Yeah.
So I think in order to, I don't think that becoming an expert, it's the end of the journey. I think it's a journey, so you're always learning.
That's right.
But I think observing your own perspective from your own culture,
Mm.
and these days that also becomes a challenge because with technology, people are exposed to different cultures through films, through series, so through music and all that. So it's not as static as it used to be when our grandparents used to
Yeah.
travel across the Atlantic and discovering a new world or a different thing. It's just today there is much more exposure, and because of that, also there are assumptions that are incorrect. It's yeah, yeah.
It's so interesting you say that. This past summer, I had a foreign exchange student staying with us. And when I asked him, what's your, you know, what's your perspective? What's going on? He said, wow, the United States just isn't like it looks in all the movies. That plus our ketchup is incredibly sweet and sugary. But it was such a shock for him
Yeah,
because we can look at the movies, we can look at one thing, unless you're boots on the ground, you
yeah.
don't really understand it.
Yeah, and it's interesting the example you gave. When I was 18 years old, I lived with a Dutch family in Canada. So I was living simultaneously two different cultures within the same household.
Oh,
And but back then, of course, the world it was very different, right? So I remember arriving in a home in the countryside that had a lot of features that I had not seen before, like a microwave oven, for instance. So
mm,
that's not the reality anymore. I think that today the availability of goods
that's
it's
true.
after globalization,
Right.
some of those material barriers have been they're not as big as they used to be. However, there's always the way people process information in our minds, and we don't bear something in our forehead, thank God, with a screen that says what are we thinking, right? So so the reaction to things
Yeah,
is it's what's really amazing. It's just
very true. Very true.
some of the misunderstandings comes from not understanding precisely the culture which is within. Yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Um, Orlando, I want to set you up for this next question. And I want to point out that you are living in Spain and you are currently in Brazil and you've lived in the US and you've lived in Canada. And I mentioned that you spoke many languages. What is the correct number?
Seven languages,
Seven
and
languages.
yeah, and I have lived and worked in nine different countries. Lived and
Okay.
worked.
So,
So
yeah.
yeah,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
but yeah, no. What I'm saying is that I think you also developed this, certain skills of
Yes.
adaptation and
Yeah,
transformation, and
that's right.
also in many cases, even with the languages. Spanish is one language, but it's spoken very differently in very different countries.
Yeah.
So I lived in Mexico, I lived in Venezuela, Argentina, and I have facilitated in Puerto Rico, in Colombia, in
Yeah.
Spain. You learn to adapt the vocabulary
Yeah.
because as a facilitator, your goal is to be understood.
Yeah.
So, in order to be understood, you have to use the terminology that will convey the message that you want to deliver,
Right.
right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
And that's exactly the point that I wanted to make is I think you are um, have really conditioned yourself so much better with that adaptable mindset because you just know about you already have the diversity in your head, right?
yeah.
So my next question is around when a facilitator is trying to set up to facilitate internationally, what about the reputation, the credibility, the expertise? I have facilitated a lot. Could could I go to Spain? Could I go to Brazil and facilitate? I mean, I already know the answer. Could
I,
I do
yeah,
that?
I think everybody can, and I think it has to do again with this curiosity and to make sure you do some pre-work and preparation.
Hmm.
One of the things that I learned, for instance, when I arrived to a country that I've never been to, and sometimes that I don't know the language, I try to watch TV in the local language, even for 5 or 10 minutes,
I do the same.
just see the way they present the news
Yeah.
because it's presented in very different ways, whether there are two men or there are two
Right,
women or
right,
a
right,
woman
right.
and a man or several people.
Beautiful.
If they kind of you if you can see that they argue with each other when they discuss when you don't know the language, it may
That's
sound that
true.
they are arguing, but they're
Right.
not. And or if you just have a very traditional one person only, everything very tidy, very that gives you already an impression, or at least
That's
it
right.
gives you an outlook into that culture. Same thing with
Absolutely.
newspapers. I remember arriving in Cape Town, South Africa, the day Mandela had gone into the hospital. This was obviously before he died. And the page, the front page, it was a huge, with huge letters saying Mandiba, it's in the hospital. I didn't even know at the time that Mandiba was the way to refer to Mandela in the local language, and so you can I think being having open all your senses to absorb
Yes.
culture, it's very important. Smells,
Yeah.
sounds, looks, colors,
Yeah.
how people dress,
Yeah.
all of that is something that you need to at least be open to understand
100%.
from that. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Added to your watch TV, I
Mm-hmm.
do that, and I also sit in a coffee shop, because you sit in a
Mm-hmm.
coffee shop and you get a feel for
Sure.
how people interact. And we're talking about facilitation here. I think comics also do this,
Sure.
because
Sure.
comics need to know how to connect with their
Yeah.
audience. Right now, I'm not
When
implying that a facilitator has an audience. You could call it how to connect with the people, right? That
yeah.
you got to get in
You
there and immerse yourself.
I like the coffee shop. When I check in, the first thing I ask is, where's the closest supermarket? And
Ooh,
I go to a supermarket
love that.
because you will see that there are a lot of products that you're familiarized with,
Yeah.
even the brands. But in some countries, you will be familiarized with the packaging and the name of the brand is different, right?
Yes.
But
Yep.
you recognize the color and the branding and the format and all that, but maybe
Yeah.
the brand it's in a local language or something like that. And you can see also what do people buy, how do they buy,
Yeah.
and how are the things presented and all that. So
Yeah.
I think we all can devise our own methods but do something that will expose you by yourself prior
Right.
to, meeting
Right.
your audience and whatnot.
And
Yeah,
thank you. And that is about the facilitator getting in the mindset. I think the other important piece here around reputation and credibility, or establishing yourself as the person who is able to help this group get from point A to point B, is fostering some level of trust. And I think,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
tips for that one?
Well, the trust, it's a fundamental one, and sometimes it's not that easy
No way. Yeah.
because of maybe the language barriers. Okay, so what I suggest is to establish from the very beginning some some mechanisms to indicate certain things. Like for instance, if I'm going to say, let's take a break, maybe I make not sign language per se, but maybe some things that you can see the reaction to these symbols that you may want,
Right.
or make sure that you do a combination of speaking something and writing something
Yes.
so you can refer to that. And also in the introduction, how you introduce yourself
Yes.
and how much you put of your bio into that introduction,
Yes.
not to sound too arrogant or not to sound too personal. You
Oh,
can you
right.
have to do a little bit of a balance in terms of setting up the stage and saying
Yeah.
especially for certain countries or cultures that are extremely respectful with the position of a teacher. That's
Yes.
another learning how people learn in primary school. That's
Yes.
that's a must.
That's
You
a good one.
you if you go to a different country, you must try to find somebody that tells you, what did you do the first 3 years of your schooling? Because that really marks how people learn. In some countries, children are taught to write every single word the teacher says.
Mm-hmm.
And so, although they're adults now and you're talking and you see everybody writing. That's because they learned that in
Yeah,
kindergarten or primary school, and they continue doing that all their lives.
yeah,
So there are certain things that you, in order to say, you don't need to write everything, you're going to have your materials, even if you say it, they may not believe you because they're not used to that. Okay?
right,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then other cultures, a lot of the European cultures, it's please don't talk so much about yourself
Yes.
because that
Yeah.
doesn't matter. You and I are
Yeah.
equal and you
And
are here to help me.
And two more examples in facilitation that I learned that you really need to adapt, pre-work and what does it mean to do something by yourself, do it in pairs or do it as a group. In some cultures, people naturally will prefer to do it as a group.
Oh, right,
So
right, right. Yeah.
when you say work individually now and you see everybody talking, you may get upset by saying, I told them work individually. But in their culture, working individually means you're very arrogant, you're very selfish, and all that.
Yes, right.
This is an incredible difference in terms of how do you facilitate and what instructions you give. So you
Oh,
may
yeah.
have to be much more careful in giving those instructions and explaining that there will be times where you work individually and you work in groups or you work in pairs or in
Yeah.
trios. You have to be much more emphatic on the importance of that. And
Yeah.
if not, just learn to do it, the way they like to learn, which is more as a team and than in an individual thing. So this is very, very interesting between North American culture and the rest. Even in Europe, in
Yeah.
some countries, they don't like to do it individually. Yeah.
I'm chuckling, Orlando, because the first time I was facilitating in Hong Kong, I I knew all about you get people into groups. It's really important. So I said to this group, I want you to get into a triad.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, no, exactly. Because the triad is like the mafia in Hong Kong. And they looked at me like, why do you want us to get into the
Yeah.
mafia? Who are
Yeah.
you? I, and I think one of the biggest things about facilitating internationally is that you have to be humble and say,
Yeah.
I didn't know. I just didn't
But
know. Right?
it's interesting. Yeah, those are the things that I suggest that you say them and also write them or do some type of a sketch. Like if you are
Right.
going to say triad or trios, just do a triangle
Sure. Or
and
say get into
show or
threes.
see.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, but
Um,
you have to be careful with you do with your hands. So there's so many do's and don'ts.
oh, yeah.
And you have to be natural. You cannot just be policing yourself for every single thing. That I think it's something that it's the
Right.
first time. It's important to say that to them
Right.
and show with respect that you want to learn as well. I
Yeah.
think that that's the most important thing. Yeah.
Thank you for commenting about being careful with your hands because I wanted to circle back with you saying time out. Uh, I also want to caution everyone on this who's watching this. Don't do this. Don't do this
Yeah.
because sometimes it's a yay and no no
Yeah.
sometimes it's a swear word so
Yeah,
you're
also,
right on the
also,
hands.
also sport expressions.
Oh
We are
yeah,
very used to
yeah,
seeing a catch 22, for instance, right?
knock it
And
out
people
of the park. Yeah,
and people have no clue, but they're
yeah,
not going to tell you. That's the whole thing. Is
that's right.
very rarely people will say, "Oh, sorry, I didn't understand that. Can you say it a different way?" So those are the type of things that you need to make it more neutral by explaining and things and not with analogies to a sport that may not be known.
Right.
Even if you use expressions from tennis or from baseball or from ice
That's a really
hockey.
good one. Yeah.
Don't do that.
Right.
Just people. That's too local. People will not know what you're doing.
I love it.
Yeah,
I love that one.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
what about dress?
I was going just to tell you, interesting, you read my mind. I was gonna say colors are also important. Also colors in terms how you dress, not just the color, but how you dress. So many, many, many years ago, I used to work with somebody that would actually give us instructions of what to wear and what colors to wear. And I think that what worked mostly everywhere was black. Just I mean, there are certain places where not, but you cannot go wrong with wearing all black.
Oh my
Uh,
word. I was invited into the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, and I had this lovely purple dress with this block color jacket on. And when I came out, one woman came up to me and said, "You're very brave." And I'm like,
yeah.
"What did I do?" Like, and she goes, "You wore color into the Great Hall of the People." Like,
Yeah.
wow, I had no idea. So, right on.
Yeah,
Black is your
yeah,
go-to.
yeah. Same thing, for instance, in Thailand, the yellow is the royal color, and you're allowed to use it only for official things. So, for instance, if you're a lawyer and you have to go to court, then you have to dress yellow. But of course, all these codes are very difficult to learn,
Yeah,
especially if you're going to stay. This is the other thing. If you're just going to fly, and be there for 48 hours, 3 days, you're not going to become an expert in 3 days. So I think you
right,
need to do a lot of preparation and maintain certain things, very standard, just eliminate some of the expressions and always ask a local, so if you
right.
have,
Yes,
if you're working with clients, ask your clients for
yes,
some of the tips. Some people are shy to tell you that, oh, don't do this, don't laugh too much, or don't do
right,
jokes or this and that. But you can. This is the first. I think this is the first test of trust to create that
right.
rapport with your client before
Exactly.
going on the stage.
I
Yeah,
like that one. Trust really goes hand in hand with
yeah,
rapport.
yeah.
Um, I always think that my goal with facilitating internationally is just not get arrested. I don't set my expectations very high.
Yeah. One warning I would also say, again, who you ask. If you ask somebody who is your next door neighbor from country X, but she or he has been living in your country for the last 20 years, he or she does no longer belong to the culture where they came
Came from,
from.
right?
That's a big thing, just, oh, I'm going to Mexico. I'm going to ask the neighbor from, he has been in Canada or the States for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
He does not know what the current Mexican culture is in
Right.
that particular city.
Right.
So pick your sources for information to be current from that
Yeah,
culture. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Orlando, I am so sad to say that we have to wrap this up because this is brilliant and we probably should do a follow-up on this one. If you had one suggestion to give to any facilitator watching out there that wants to facilitate internationally, what would it be?
Just be yourself, be authentic, and also don't be afraid. Okay. I want to make sure that all these different things that I shared don't create this, animosity about, the world is huge, it's big, it's fun, and just be curious.
Yeah, I like
That's
it.
the, yeah.
I love it.
Okay.
Great. Thank you, Orlando. It has been such a delight to talk with you today, and I really hope this has been really beneficial to anyone facilitating internationally. Thanks so much, Orlando.
Thank you.